Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some of which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're taking a look at Kicks, which was a 1981 arcade release from Taito's American branch, designed by Randy and Sandy Pfeiffer. It was ported to Atari 5200 in 1982 and then Atari 8-bit in 1983. Now, unlike a lot of cases where the Atari 5200 and the Atari 8-bit version were very similar to one another, there are actually significant differences between the two versions. The 5200 version more closely resembles the original arcade game in terms of presentation and special effects and animations and that sort of thing, whereas the 8-bit version has been more clearly designed as a release that's kind of unique to that platform, making use of its own distinctive characteristics, things like display list interrupts and good use of the pokey sound chip and that sort of thing. So we're playing the Atari 8-bit version today. Let's go play Kicks. Okay, here we are with Kicks for Atari 8-bit. Like I say, this is the Atari 8-bit version, not the Atari 5200 version. If you are curious about the Atari 5200 version, people have ported that to Atari 8-bit, so you can play that on Atari 8-bit as well. Or most Atari 8-bit emulators can also handle 5200 ROMs as well. So yeah, that version is easily accessible, but this is the version that I grew up with. So and I've actually got a physical copy that I forgot to show off in the intro. Oh well, that's silly, isn't it? But I can't go out in the hallway right now because we're having some renovations going on and the floor is currently covered with wet concrete, so I can't go through there and go and get it. So you'll just have to take my word for it. Maybe check me out on other social media and I'll put a photograph of it there. Oh, I probably won't, because I probably won't remember to do that. Yeah, anyway, I do own a copy of this on cartridge, which is nice. Anyway, Kicks. If you've never played Kicks, this is how it works. You are the little red blob thing at the bottom, and you have to draw lines. And when you draw a line, it fills in and captures part of the play area. Now, there are things trying to stop you from drawing your lines. Most notably, the Kicks itself, which is the weird sort of bouncy line shape that sort of floats around and makes that horrible buzzing noise. And the sparks, which follow around the perimeter of the playfield and stop you from sitting in one place for too long. Also, if you start drawing and then stop moving, then a spark will start following your line along. And as you can see there, if anything touches your line while you are drawing, then you will lose a life. So the Kicks is there to kind of control what you're doing. And there we go. On each level you have a threshold amount of the play area that you're supposed to capture. In this case, 75%. So ideally, you want to do as much of that as possible at a time to get more points. But you also have to be extremely careful not to get... Whoops! Not to get caught by anything. Because the further you go in the game, the faster the Kicks moves. And I think there's sort of some extra sparks and stuff start appearing over time as well, so... Now, if you're feeling feisty, you can hold down the fire button and draw instead. But you have to do that before you start drawing, and that draws a red line instead. And if you fill in a red space instead of a blue space, you get more points. But you move at like half the speed, so... much more dangerous. Now, as you can see, the presentation of this game is pretty simple. But this is sort of, like I said in the intro, this is kind of an iconic Atari 8-bit game as far as I'm concerned, because it's making use of sort of the default system fonts. Which normally is something I'd consider criticising, but you know what? In this game, it sort of really makes it distinctive and obvious that this is an Atari 8-bit game. And I like that. I like the use of the sort of half-height graphics 1 font there for the area covered in the threshold. Kicks was never a looker in the first place. It was all designed to be an extremely abstract sort of experience. And I think this game really sort of captures that feel nicely. And it's just nicely enjoyable with a slight touch of sinisterness as well. A lot of people are sort of pointing out that the kind of buzzing noise that the kicks makes is kind of freaky. And yeah, it is. It's like having a sort of wasp buzzing around you, and you never know when it's quite going to strike, because if you look at its movement, it's not sort of following a standard sort of bounce algorithm or anything like that. It does sort of change direction at random, and thus it's quite unpredictable to deal with at times. Now, there are various strategies you can use to kind of keep it under control with the... Oops. With the most popular one being trying to trap it in a small area. And the way you do that is what I'm trying to do here, which is... It's not what I'm doing there at all. That didn't work. Anyway, basically what you want to try and do is you sort of build a tall vertical area, or horizontal area, depending on where you're trying to trap it. Whoops. And yeah, you basically try and make it so that the kicks can't get out from the area that you're drawing. It's very tricky to do, especially when it's moving quickly. But it is possible. And it's a very helpful strategy in the later levels. I've never been especially good at it though, because I actually only really learned the strategy quite recently. I certainly didn't know it when I was growing up with this game. And now we have 2 kickses. And now I'm dead. Is that it? Yes, that is it. So yeah, I like this version of the game. It does have a couple of little issues. The main one being, I think, the fact that it's a little bit easy to accidentally start drawing a line when you just mean to follow around the perimeter. Because if I remember correctly, in the arcade original you have to press a button to start drawing, regardless of if you're drawing a blue line or a red line. Whereas in this one, to draw a blue line, you just go off the edge of the perimeter. And when you're trying to navigate your way around a corner, it's very easy to accidentally turn a bit early or late or go too far. So you have to, like that, see? And as you know, if you start drawing a line and the kicks collides with it, then, well, you're going to lose a life. And sometimes, because of the way this works, that can feel slightly unfair. I mean, the alternative, of course, is to always draw the red lines, because you have to hold down the fire button to do that. But no, I guess that doesn't really solve the problem either, because you've still got to get around the corners and things, haven't you? So I don't know. Like I say, it's not game breaking or anything for me, but it is something to sort of bear in mind. Alright, let's see if I can do the Pro Strat skill. Nope! No, I cannot. No, I cannot. I'm not entirely sure what that 40 over on the right means. Is it to do with the number of points you get or something? I can't really tell. I don't know. The thing I like about kicks is that as you play, you're basically creating the levels. And so every time you play, it's going to be a little bit different because of the very nature of the game, really. Now, if... No, that was never going to work, was it? I was going to say, if you can actually draw a line so that one kicks is on each side of the playfield, then you can get lots and lots of bonus points. But I failed to do that, so... And now it's game over. Right, let's see what pressing select an option do. Right, so select allows you to play a 2-player game. I believe it's alternating turns in this. So there's no simultaneous play. Okay. And pressing option changes that number, which I assume is something to do with difficulty level. So let's turn that right up to full and see what difference that makes. Doesn't seem any harder. You know, if I'd remembered to pick up the physical copy and look at the actual manual, I could probably tell you what that number means. But it's more fun to figure it out for ourselves, isn't it? I always like that noise it makes when it's filling in the area. I've talked previously about sounds that have kind of stayed with me over the years. And the noise of filling in a... Damn it. The noise of filling in a space in kicks on the Atari 8-bit has always been one of those sounds that has really stuck with me. I will always remember it. Casses. Yeah, I'm really wondering what that number could possibly be. No! Death, apparently. Alright, well, let's go to the other end of the spectrum and turn it right down to 10 and see what happens. Oh, I see what it is. It's the timer. Right, so if you turn it right up to 90, if you watch the red bar at the top of the screen, it goes really slowly. Whereas if you turn it down to 10, it goes really quickly. I'm not sure exactly what the number represents, but yeah, that's basically what it is. The lower the number, the shorter time you have. It's not seconds, I don't think. Or is it? Oh, no, it's not a time limit, is it? Look, it's, actually, I don't know if you can see that because I'm capturing at 30 frames a second and they might be flickering too much. It's the time before more sparks appear. And so the lower the number, the more difficult it's going to be because you'll start getting more sparks appearing. I get it. Okay, so the default was 40 or something, which seemed pretty well balanced. Maybe it is seconds, actually. Right, that is what the Pro Strat is, except with the Pro Strat I would have caught him in the bottom area, not the top area. But yeah, that's basically how it works. Is you trap the kicks in a small area, and that means you can capture a lot more of the level than you would be able to otherwise. But again, not really helpful here. Uh-oh. I remember the spark that follows you along your line in this. Used to kind of really creep me out as a kid. For some reason. Not really sure why, but I guess it is kind of creepy. I think it reminded me of a spider, was the thing. It just felt like a sort of spider following you along your line and coming to get you. I don't like spiders. I really didn't like spiders when I was a kid. I don't now, for that matter, but, you know, when you're a kid, everything you're frightened of is infinitely more scary. Than it would have ever been as an adult. I don't know what I'm talking about. That's the thing with this game. It gets kind of hypnotic after a while, and you just sort of get into a kind of kicks trance. And you're just drawing lines and filling shapes and having a jolly good time. I actually didn't know until relatively recently. It's a warm, okay. I actually didn't know until relatively recently that there were a number of sequels to this. So there was Super Kicks, which was, if I remember correctly, developed by the people who would go on to make the Gal's Panic series, which is sort of one of the more well-known Kix clones out there. Primarily well-known due to its use of sexy ladies. One of the first ecchi games, if we're being technical about it. Kaneko, that was their name, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure either Kaneko developed or the people who would become Kaneko developed Super Kix. I did an article about this on Moe Gamer a while back, so check that out if you want to know something with some actual research rather than me rambling on while I'm trying to concentrate on this game and not doing a great job of it. Anyway, but yeah, there was also, oh, what was it called? Volfeed, which I actually remember seeing some articles about in a favourite magazine of mine back in, I guess it would have been the early 90s or so, maybe the late 80s. But yeah, there was a multi-format games magazine that I used to really like called Advanced Computer Entertainment. And I remember seeing a feature on Volfeed in that and thinking, oh, that looks a bit like Kix, but I didn't really make the connection at that time. And I don't think the writers of the article about it did either. Just one of many ways that we're all a lot better at talking about video games these days. Volfeed's cool if you've never tried it, incidentally. It's sort of like Kix plus sci-fi. Because it's got kind of the aesthetic of a sci-fi shooter about it. But you're playing Kix, basically. It's just like, there we are. All score now doubled. So if you can trap the two Kixes in separate parts, then it restarts the level, or possibly goes on to the next one, and doubles all the points that you score. So it's well worth doing. As you can see, my score up in the top left has gone into considerably higher than we've managed to get up until this point. But yeah, as I was saying, Volfeed is great. If you have access to a PlayStation 2 or something from that generation of consoles, the Taito Legends collection of games has both the original Kix and Super Kix and Volfeed, so you can play every generation of Kix on that collection. Or you can play the Atari 8-bit version like we've been doing today, which is, like I say, a solid version that feels more like it's been built for the 8-bit rather than trying to be a kind of super true port of the arcade original. So if you want a much more true version of the arcade original, have a look at the 5200 version, because that's almost arcade perfect. I mean, not entirely, because obviously sort of different hardware and so on, but in terms of presentation, it's very close to the arcade original. It's quite impressive. But like I say, I've always had a particular soft spot for this version, so that's the version we've been playing. Anyway, that has been Kix for Atari 8-bit. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.